Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you an OP Pure 12 Eldritch Knight Fighter build in Baldur's Gate 3. This is one of the top 5 best builds in the game, and it got a huge buff in patch 8. Now what makes this so crazy is a level 7 War Magic ability lets you do Booming Blade on your first attack, do another attack, and then you get a bonus action attack. If that's not crazy enough, you also get an Eldritch Strike ability that's actually bugged, so when you do a weapon attack against a target, it's going to have disadvantage on all saving throws against things that you do against it. It says spells, but this also accounts for Lithic abilities and some weapon passives as well. Not to mention how crazy Shadow Blade is, and if you're playing as Gale, he can actually get a Shadow Magic spell slot, which lets him do the level 3 version of it, because the Eldritch Knight typically only gets level 2. But we're going to start off here at level 1 with the Fighter. The best fighting style, in my opinion, I really like the defense here with a +1 to armor class. This is going to be good if you're doing a range attack or if you're doing melee, so just a very versatile choice. Now, we can go with great weapon fighting if you prefer a two-handed weapon, but I'll show you the max damage version of this, and I think defense is great for most purposes. Now, our ability score spread is a little bit complex. We typically want to have our constitution up to 16. We can use some intelligence. However, it's not really that important since we're going to be using Booming Blade and weapon attacks more so than spellcasting. And if you really want to spellcast, just play a sorcerer or a wizard. But in all honesty, a dexterity-based one is perfectly viable because this lets you use ranged weapon attacks at long range. And there's some great weapons in the early game like Father or Louvre we can use. And if you want to take advantage of some strength-based options, like we can go Tavern Brawler and use a strength potion for maximum throwing damage, the Eldritch Knight is extremely versatile, but I think that this stat spread works best. Level 2 gives us Action Surge. You guys know how good that is, an extra action, which allows you to get the extra attacks. Whereas in Honor Mode, Haste doesn't let you do extra attacks. This will. Now for our level 3 here, we're also going with the Eldritch Knight. Cantrips definitely have Booming Blade here. This is an essential one because it doesn't add any extra damage yet, but once you get to level 5, it does an additional 1d8, and level 10 gives it 2d8 of thunder damage, and then 3d8 if the target moves, for a potential of 5d8 of thunder damage, which is just absurd. Crazier though is it triggers the War Magic. One little asterisk here is it has to be the first weapon attack that you do that's going to give you the War Magic extra attack, so I'd highly recommend starting off combat with your Booming Blade here. I'd also recommend Mage Hand. This is a really good cantrip because it can throw healing potions to you. It can throw water bottles if you have a cold or lightning caster. Friends is good if you're the face of the party, but run away after 10 turns if you're on Tactician or Honor Mode. And Minor Illusion's another good one. I also wouldn't mind having Bone Chill because this can stop targets from receiving healing, but I think the best two is Mage Hand and Booming Blade. Blade Ward is an okay choice too. Now, what we're going to be rolling with for our spells here, Shield for the +5 to armor class is reaction. This is massive, take it, and Magic Missile. What's great about this is it guarantees damage, and you can hit some targets at long range, which is kind of nice. Thunderwave's okay if you want the pushback, but I don't think it's going to be that useful. And for the expanded spell list, if you don't have one player on your team that has Long Strider, you can be the Long Strider taker. Otherwise, Grease is a good one for the crowd control, and Find Familiar for the Raven, especially early game blinding targets can be quite nice. Upon hitting level 4, I would recommend actually Thunderwave. Eldritch Strike can make this sometimes actually decent to hit. And if you have like the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, you can actually boost your spell save DC up quite high so that people get pushed away from this. It's not optimal, like any of these here just kind of suck. I'd recommend just do weapon attacks. Also ignore this, I have Mistress Spells downloaded. Now, one thing is actually at level 3, we get a bind weapon. So if you like the returning pike, you can use Tavern Brawler in the early game with a strength potion. That's going to be one of the strongest builds in the early game. However, I don't like that style play too much, and I actually think that Alert is one of the best feats, especially going into level 5 when we get 2 attacks, because our role in combat is to go in and Booming Blade someone right off the bat and try to take out a target. And we can't be surprised. I honestly think that Alert is one of the best feats in the game. You could alternatively go with a dexterity-based improvement if you didn't want that feat. Level 5, extra attack. Booming Blade, attack. It's great. We'll then at level 7 get a nice buff. But level 6 gives us our next fighter feat, which is great. Personally, I think that Savage Attacker is really good on this, especially because we're going to get multiple damage die. Being able to re-roll these is really good. It's a flat-out boost to our DPS. Dexterity is nice if you're using a dexterity-based armor, but I just think Savage Attacker ends up boosting our damage so much more. And level 7 here is a big power spike. So we went from doing our attack, and then having a bonus action to do things like Second Wind. Now we have bonus action attacks thanks to starting with Booming Blade. So 3 attacks at level 7. This is one of the strongest builds at level 7, outside of like a druid. Once we get here though, we also get some more spell selection. So Darkness can be an interesting one if you wanted to use. There's the Eversight Ring in Act 2, and in Act 3, there's the Evil Shar Spear, and then also the Steel Watcher Helmet. So you can see a magical darkness with those. That'd be the most powerful version of this. Scorching Ray is another option, but I don't love spell casting. My honest picks are Gust of Wind, pushing creatures back. You can get rid of darkness, but we want darkness. This is more so if you want to push back with a strength save. Arcane Lock can kind of be fun for the utility. Darkness is another good choice. We don't really care too much about these spells. We do have one that we will take later on when we get the expanded spell slot. Level 8 gives us the expanded one. So this is great because it includes Hold Person, which is such a useful spell. If you like utility, Knock you can be the lock picker for your team. Misty Step is great for the teleportation, and Mirror Image for a +9 armor class. Really hard to go wrong with this one for the boost to your survivability, but I think Hold Person is great because of the Eldritch Strike we'll get in 2 levels, because then the target's going to have disadvantage on their saving throw. We get crits on our attacks, and that turns things insane. Now for our next level, a Lucky Feat is an okay choice. As mentioned, Tavern Brawler if you want to use Nyrulna as you get into Act 2, but my personal preference is going with the dexterity-based increase. I just think this is best for the increased initiative, as well as the armor class if we're using something medium armor related. Level 9 gives us Indomitable. When you fail a saving throw, you can roll again. It's good, just basically survivability at that point. Level 10 gives us that ever-powerful Eldritch Strike. Now, this is funny because it says it gives disadvantage on the next saving throw against a spell. It's not very honest with you guys. It basically means anything that the target can save on. And it's not just the next spell. The way it's worded sounds like it's just one spell. It's actually the 2-turn duration that this lasts on the enemy. So you can actually get things like the blood-curdling emission here off of the Bow of the Banshee, so you can frighten the target a lot easier. It also counts towards your Illithid power, so you got more control over that. There's probably a lot of things here that we don't even realize it works with, but yeah, it gives disadvantage on a lot of different saving throws, basically. We then get another cantrip, and I do think that Minor Illusion here is a really good choice, because you can group enemies together for your other teammates. If you don't want to use that, I guess you could use like Firebolt to explode things. It's not a bad option to have. Bone Chill to stop targets from receiving healing can be good. There's a couple fights in Act 3 that this is nice. If you want more utility though, like Minor Illusion's great. We also get a choice of another spell here. I guess we'll take Scorching Ray, kind of for the same thought process, just to explode things if you need to explode multiple at a time. Level 11, extra attack, improved. You can do 2 attacks after your action. This is huge because we can now do Booming Blade, attack, bonus action attack for more magic. Crazy damage potential. We also get another spell here. Really nothing that we're going to be using too much. Shatter can sometimes be good outside of combat if you need to destroy something with thunder damage. So that's a good use, I guess. And then level 12 gives us our final feat. I'm again going to mention the Tavern Brawler feat if you want to use Nyrulna and throw that. It's going to be really strong. Tough is a good one. Extra 24 extra health. And I also like to go just with the classic ability score improvement, and we can max out our dexterity here for the maximum possible initiative and armor class. And this armor is the Royal Knight armor by Skirby on Nexus and Mod.io. And as far as gear goes, I'm going to show a couple different options and obviously early game options as well. But as mentioned, Steel Watcher Helmet lets us take advantage of darkness. And if we use Shadow Blade, this is the most overpowered combination of the game. It's actually kind of crazy. It also gives us advantage on our saving throws, which is great for holding our concentration if we want to land darkness or hold person on something. So very useful in a lot of situations. I also want to mention the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. Whenever we do weapon attacks, we gain a plus to our spell save. What's crazy about this is we can do like a Booming Blade, follow it up with an Arrow of Many Targets, max out our spell save DC, and then we can lock down characters really easy that way. The Haste Helmet is another good helmet in the very early game, which will give you extra movement speed, which I think is very useful when you're starting off. And the Hat of Storm Silence Power is actually another alternative. If you have someone that's using the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, you can then use the Drake Throat Glaive thunder damage on your weapon or your bow, and it basically ends up being the same thing. It's kind of crazy, but I'm going to use the Steel Watcher Helmet here. If you have a boosted spell save DC, what's interesting is the Nymph Cloak, which has Dominate Person, usually a little bit of a harder spell to land. And what's funny about this is our Eldritch Strike will work on this, and we can get our spell save boosted quite high. So this is the one, I think, use case where this is actually an okay cloak. It's kind of funny, but I like the Cloak Protection. Elemental Absorption is good too, and even something like the Deathstalker Mantle if you're playing as Dirge. There's also, I guess, the Thunderskin Cloak if you wanted to go on a Reverberation build. I do have the Boots of Stormy Clamor there, which is nice because you can, whenever you get hit with an attack, you can end up dazing them. Dazing them gives them disadvantage on the wisdom save, so you can land hold person, and then your cleric and your paladin can land command a little easier. Now for armor, there's a lot of really good armor sets. As I mentioned, I went around dexterity because this gives you options like the unwanted masterwork scale mail for resistance to fire damage and your full dex modifier added on top. I have the armor of agility with 17 AC and then a +2 to our armor class or saving throws and dex modifier added. So without a shield, we got a 24 AC. We're pretty hard to hit. The Dwarven Split Mail is another good one in Act 3, and obviously the Helldust armor, but this one gives you more constitution if you're not using any items to supplement that. Again, the Reaper's Embrace is typically a good weapon or a good armor set for when you get it, and obviously replace as soon as you get to Act 3 a bit deeper in it, but not a bad option overall. Armor persistence is great too, and in the early game, the Adamantine Scale Mail is fantastic, and you can honestly wear this the entire game if you wanted to, but Armor of Agility just edges out for a bit better. Now, gloves. The Crater Flesh gloves are insane once you get to the later section of the game. In the early game, you can dump your dexterity and use Gloves of Dex, or you could even go with the Gloves of the Belligerent Skies here, which does thunder whenever you deal thunder damage, you can apply reverberation on the enemies. Not a bad choice either. Now, as mentioned, the Boots of Stormy Clamor, I just prefer having this because what's funny about the Crater Flesh gloves is it says it's a 1d6, but since it's a crit, it turns into a 2d6. So that's actually kind of a good amount of damage off. And the Boots of Stormy Clamor gives the enemy reverberation. If we threaten them, which means we walk up with a teammate of ours, we can apply this. So sometimes it's really good if the enemy is approaching us, we can end up knocking them prone. Some other good options are the Disintegrating Nightwalker, so you get Misty Step if you need a bit of extra mobility. Late game, the Helldust Boots kind of fills that purpose, but and also the Evasive Shoes works great, but I do think that the Boots of Stormy Clamor are a little bit better. And for the weapon, I got the Sword of Chaos here. This is a good late game weapon for just overall healing. The Halberd of Vigilance is another good one. Act 1, the Knife of the Undermountain King, is fantastic, and it's a finesse-based weapon. It actually hits pretty hard, and it'll reroll damage die. You can go with that, plus the Belm if you want to have like a less cheesy setup. And the Lightning Jabber actually works really well in this build. There's also the Charge Bound Warhammer, which we combined with our Weapon Bond, and it'll return to our hand when we throw it. This is actually some pretty crazy damage in the early game, so I definitely recommend checking that out. I mentioned Tavern Brawler being great. Nyrulna is another one. Like, this build actually complements these weapons really well, even though Nyrulna returns your hand naturally. It's good on this setup. I also like the Sethin with the Spiritual Great Axe. It's a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure reference, kind of funny. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, if you want to maximize damage, you can do a little trick here. We could have taken Shadow Blade at a previous level, but I actually think it's better because we can go ahead with the ring version. It's going to be the same level because we can't upcast it. We only get level 2 spells. So it's not something that we really care to prepare when we can prepare so many other spells. And then we got our Shadow Blade. It's just insanely powerful on this setup because it does a 2d8 of damage. And again, if you got Gale, you can get the 3d8 version. And then we can further complement that with the Shadow Cloaked Ring, which is going to add additional 1d4 of psychic damage on top of that, which is fantastic because we're going to be oftentimes hidden using darkness and things like that. And then we also get the Ring of Elemental Effusion. If you're in honor mode, this trick won't work, but when you use Booming Blade, you get an additional 1d4 of thunder on your next attack, which is kind of cool. There's also the Ring of Arcane Synergy, which will add our intelligence modifier, so 3 extra damage onto our melee attacks, which is pretty nice. If we're going for crits, the Killer Sweetheart, giving ourselves a crit with Crater Flesh gloves is really good too. And there's also like the Coruscation Ring. If you're lit up, not using darkness, we can go with something like this to help apply our, if we're using the Gloves of Belligerent Skies, to apply reverberation. The Band of the Mystic Scoundrel lets us do a bonus action spell, which is okay, but we do have a bonus action attack, so I prefer that on like a Paladin. If you're doing the throwing build, Flinging Ring can be good too. I also like the Ring of Free Action, a very underrated ring, which doesn't slow you down at all, so you can go into combat with that. And last ring I'll recommend is the Strange Conduit Ring. If you're holding a concentration, you can get an additional 1d4 of psychic damage, so that's rings giving us 2 1d4s of psychic, which is kind of crazy. I'm going to go with the Ring of Arcane Synergy, as I found that this works well, and you get that additional 3 damage after using Booming Blades. It's worth it. I also got the Hellrider Longbow in our offhand here, or in our bow slot. One thing is, if you're not, you could use Belm here. Belm's a really good offhand weapon. You could also throw on the Cold Snap if you have cold casters on your team. This will also give you a +1 AC in the offhand, and if a target attacks you and misses, which we have a high AC of 25 with this weapon, they'll be chilled for 2 turns, taking double cold damage. So this actually synergizes well with other setups on our team. I'm going to throw on a shield because we got a weapon here that skills on dex, and it also lets us use a shield. So we may as well boost up our armor class and make ourselves very hard to hit. And I'm using a strength potion at the moment to get our strength even higher, which adds a bit extra damage onto the Shadow Blade, that +8 there. Now, one last thing I do want to mention is the Resonant Stone in Act 2 is where the Shadow Blade becomes insane because targets will get double psychic damage. We also have the negative effects of the Steeped in Bliss, so we'll have disadvantage on mental saving throws. It's something you got to keep in mind. If you have the Gloves of the Automaton, you can put those on, and it actually will negate the negatives of this. But Honestly, this is so powerful, and Shadowblade's special passive is that whenever you're using it, you can actually get advantage on attack rolls against lightly or heavily obscured targets. So anytime that you get the damage bonus from this ring, this is going to have advantage on attack rolls. You're not missing, and we can set that up with ease with a Steel Watcher helmet. And then you can use arrows of darkness to shoot them at the enemies, get the darkness, set up Shadowblade for easier crits, and you'll do extra damage. Now when it comes to combat, if you have a teammate which is an archer focused build, they got arrows of darkness, which sets you up so well because everyone's going to be blinded except for us. So we can run in there and then go ahead with our attacks. And as mentioned, start off with a booming blade, and you can see the damage potential here. So we got a 2d8 plus 8 plus 1d4 psychic plus 2d8 thunder. The great part about this is that psychic damage is doubled, so we're actually getting more like a 60 to 70 potential damage before we encounter crits. And this is likely going to take them out. 28 attack roll. Yeah, that did pretty stellar damage. And since you're a fighter with improved extra attack, most of the times the best move is going to be attack. Wow. So our weapon hit for 74 psychic damage because we're re-rolling it with Savage Attacker. And we also re-roll our damage die on this here, the force damage from the Crater Flesh Glove. So that was 9 extra force damage. Pretty nuts. We also have advantage on this attack, so we may as well take it. Also, cool thing, our blade will turn blue when we have Arcane Synergy active. Pretty nice stuff. We rolled a 35 to hit. We don't need to use that. Pretty nuts. Now, the other thing is, if you got a nice darkness pocket set up, you can continually keep moving around. We got our another extra attack here. Rolled a 25. One-shot him again, pretty nuts. Now, Booming Blade again. I have haste in the character to showcase because I don't use my teammates, but Booming Blade is a big thing that we want to use, especially if you got haste. Use it often, so you just go around smacking everyone around. Insane damage with that extra 2d8 of thunder. What's great about the Booming Blade too is that we got a really high armor class, so we can actually run away from targets and eat the opportunity attack so that they have to move and then hit us again. But yeah, we'll roll the crit here just to show you 74 plus 8 again. Insane amounts of damage. You're likely going to one-shot most humanoids with this technique. What's cool is our shield also turns blue with the Arcane Synergy, but another 56 damage. I could use Action Surge, but I don't need to. I'm just going to retreat back to the darkness pocket. And that target just jumped. For some reason, when there's darkness around, the enemy's AI acts a little silly. They sometimes jump. They'll throw weapons because they can't do melee attacks or like do a lot of stuff into darkness. So they're going to do throwing attacks most of the time, which is not too bad. Typically, they're not going to be spec'd very well for doing that. And again, just to mention, always start off your encounter with Booming Blade. This is how you get that War Magic extra attack to trigger. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Now, we can also use things like bow attacks here. The Titan String Bow plus a Strength Potion is actually pretty crazy damage. But the Arrow of Many Targets lets you stricken multiple targets with the Eldritch Inertia, which is really good. So typically, you want to try and get this spread on as many targets as possible. We got the Fairy Fire off on this one. I'm just going to burn up my extra attacks here and then show you guys a little trick that I like to use whenever we got a bunch of targets struck with Eldritch Inertia. We're applying the reverberations what took that target out there. So yeah, we're continuously applying that reverberation with the Eldritch Inertia there. Knocked him prone from it. So that's perfect. And then since we have Action Surge still, we can go ahead with Hold Person. Now this is only going to hit one target, and this is the one that I want. 44% chance. If we have any of the Arcane Acuity base gear, it's going to hit a lot harder. The Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power being another good set of gloves if we didn't want to go higher on the crit damage. And that was a big fat failure. And funny enough, they actually just ran right up to my darkness here. I'm not sure why they thought that was a good idea, but we'll just make it easy for them. And we re-triggered our Arcane Synergy here. Now we can just pick away at this target here. Yeah, if I would have landed that Hold Person, it would have been a lot better, but you can always try next time. That last target had a really high wisdom score, so it just made it a little bit easier rather than getting that advantage attack to finish him off. So that is what I believe to be one of the strongest builds in Baldur's Gate 3, the Eldritch Knight Fighter. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if this video is useful, and check out more of my Pure 12 builds. I got them for a lot of different classes here and more on the way. Have a great day. We'll catch you later.